Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Toma. I'm your host, Jason Bowler, where we're taking on middle age. If you're watching or listening to this podcast in order, then last week would have been our first episode with an actual guest, which I hope to do more in the future. And we're definitely going to have one at the end of this month, which is February. And so, in the spirit of trying to have episodes that kind of lead up to whoever our guest is going to be, we're going to try to stick with that same process. This month, we're going to be talking about stacking skills, how it's important to learn new skills, how it's important to grow in the shadows, at least at first, so as the haters don't come out of the woodwork and try to dream kill you before you ever get going. And we're going to talk about how to march to the beat of your own drum, how to not let yourself get put in a box, and don't use other people's expectations define what you will and won't do to improve your life. So we have to talk about who those people are. We have to start there. We're going to be talking about what I like to call, and I did not make this up, someone else did, but I love the saying. It's called crabs in a bucket. We're going to talk about crabs in the bucket today. Today's episode is crabs in a bucket, why people pull you back down when you start to climb. So if you're not familiar with the term crabs in a bucket, it comes from if you go out and catch crabs, and I don't mean at a seedy bar, I mean the other kind of crabs, the crabs you eat. If you go out and you're catching those crabs and you start to fill your bucket up, there's always going to be a crab that's going to try to climb out of the top of the bucket. And inevitably, they never get out because other crabs will take their little pinchers and pull them right back down into the bucket. And this is why they refer to people that do the same thing to other people as crabs in a bucket or having a crab mentality. The thing is, though, crabs are crabs. They're probably not thinking, well, this son of a bitch is about to get out of this bucket. He ain't leaving me. They're probably thinking, hey, bro, take me with you, and not understanding that crab can't lift both of them out. Who knows if a crab can finally make it out, go back, get a rope, and pull all the other crabs out. That remains to be seen because they always get pulled back in. Point is, they can't pull more than one crab out as they're trying to get out themselves, and the other crabs don't understand it, and they latch on and try to pull them down. I don't think it's malicious. I don't think they're just like, no, buddy, if we're getting cooked, you're getting cooked too. But when it comes to people, it's a little bit different. It is a little bit more intentional about trying to keep that crab down in the bucket with the rest of them. So that is the crab mentality. That is crabs in a bucket in a nutshell. So we have to talk about the mentality of why humans are crabs in the bucket when we start to grow, when we start to move up, when we start to hit another level. And we've just put our foot down and we said, hey, we're done. We're done with the status quo. We're done with the mediocrity. We're done with all that. We're moving up. We're going to do something. Come hell or high water, we're going to take a chance on ourselves, whether that means we're going to start exercising like madmen, or we're going to quit a bunch of bad habits, or we're going to start a podcast, or we're going to start a business, or we're going to do this. We're going to go to freaking Tahiti and learn how to surf. It don't matter. Anytime we decide we want to do something and chase some sort of dream of ours, someone's going to come along that's supposed to be our friends, and they're going to try to pull us down. And it doesn't necessarily happen for middle-aged people as much as it does younger people, but I do have younger listeners who are still very much influenced by other people their age that are very much crabs in a bucket. And if you don't believe they exist, there's plenty of stories out there about people that made it to the NFL, the NBA, or what have you, became multimillionaires overnight, and because they came from a bad environment, some of those same people are trying to pull them back into that environment, and sometimes it's successful, and that becomes a tragic news story. So I think we're all aware that it happened. So what is the psychology behind those crabs in a bucket? What are they thinking? Whether they know they're thinking it or not, where does it all come from? Well, one of them is insecurity and low self-esteem. They don't feel good about themselves. They're insecure about their ability to grow. And so when they see someone else who was an equal of theirs, a friend of theirs, deciding that they're going to do it and that they're able to shed their low self-esteem and their insecurities and risk failure for the chance at greatness or a chance of success, and they're still not willing to do that, that hurts their self-esteem even more. It's really not about you as the person climbing out. It's about them. They're insecure. They have low self-esteem. And ultimately, not to be mean, because these are people we know, and a lot of times it's our friends, that's their problem. They can either be inspired by you and they can do the same, or they can not care one way or the other, which is fine, or they can get over their self-esteem problems and not hold you responsible for how they feel about themselves. I mean, that's really their three choices, right? Neither of which are your problem unless they come to you and ask you for help and they want to grow too. And that's when you should be willing to help. But if they're not willing to do that, none of us should feel bad if they're not trying to get better. And we are. So the other one is envy and jealousy. This is specifically when you start having success that the rest of the world can clearly see. Whether you're all of a sudden went from mediocre looking guy to now you got washboard abs and more women are looking at you, right? Or you got a promotion at work and now all of a sudden you make a little more money than they do, and you got a new car. The only time I really get envious and jealous, and I'm going to be 100% honest about this. I talked about this with a friend the other day. I have vacation envy. So I can afford to go on the same vacations my friends goes on. But if he gets to a place before I get there, I get envious because then I have to look at his pictures and I have to start planning and try. And it's not like I'm trying to go everywhere he goes and he's not trying to go everywhere I go, but there's a lot of places we both would like to go at some point. And if he gets there before me, I get envious. But other than that, I try not to be envious of anybody else's success, especially if I call them a friend. Why would I not be super proud? I have former students that have done better than me, super proud of them. I have family members that do better than me, super proud of them. And I have friends that do better than me. It's just not a good way to live. It is a very crabbish mentality to be jealous and envious of other people that you claim to support. So don't be a crab if you're thinking that way yourself. And then there's a need for dominance and control. Sometimes, if you're the ringleader, and let's face it, every group's got a ringleader. We don't go to the voting booths and cast our ballots. It's not official necessarily, but everybody's kind of got that leader, right? Everybody gravitates to one person's house or one person's area, right? One person's idea about what to do is always taken more seriously than anybody else's when it's time to go out to eat or go do this or go do that. There's always a ringleader. And if you're not already the ringleader and you start making your own decisions about what you're going to do, that can be threatening to some people that want to be the ringleader at all times. Now, in a perfect world, there would be no ringleaders and everybody would have equal weight in every conversation or every confrontation or whatever. A lot of friend groups just don't work that way. So if you're the one rising up and the ringleader starts being a little snippy with you, that could have something to do with it. And then there's this idea that it's a zero-sum mindset, meaning there's not enough out there for everybody. So if one of your friends is doing a lot better than you are, that they're taking something that you could have had. But that's just a lie, right? There's plenty of money. There's plenty of job opportunities. There's plenty of space at the gym to go sit right beside them and work out. There's plenty of shoes out there. They didn't buy the only pair of running shoes. You can buy some too. And so even a podcast, if you want to start a podcast and one of your friends already has a podcast, guess what? You can start a podcast too. You can do anything you want to do. It's not a zero-sum game, but a crab mentality will make people think that it is. So if someone else has something that they wouldn't mind having, well, they have no chance of getting it now because someone else has it. And that's just not reality. And then there's more malicious envy, and these people really aren't our friends anyway. They actually actively want us to fail. They actively go out of their way to hope that we fail. And as you start to grow, you're going to find out. You may be surprised to find out that a lot of people actively want you to fail because maybe they have a problem with you that you didn't even know they had with you. And they can deal with you when you're lowly, when you're not doing so good, because they can be like, yeah, I don't like that person, but he's also out of shape and, is ruining his life. So who cares? But now all of a sudden I don't like that person and he's doing really good. That causes a lot of resentment there. So you're going to get a crab that way too. And then some people are just narcissistic. They think that they're the best at everything there is to do. And so if you shine in something that outshines them, then the narcissism comes in. It's like, well, I'm better looking. I'm more athletic. I do this, I do that, but I didn't start that business that makes $1 million a year. That guy did. And that kind of pisses me off because I'm used to being the best at everything. So there, you got that kind of mentality going on. And then there's projection where people that are just hurt or unhappy project that on everybody else and they want everybody else to be unhappy. So when you start getting your life together and you're happy, they don't like that because the misery loves company. So that's just going through a few examples of the psychology behind crabs mentality, crabs in a bucket, what have you. How does it manifest itself though? Sometimes it can be from discouragement. Discouragement happens when people downplay your achievements. And to me, there is nothing worse than that. I mean, it can come off innocent enough, but it's really, that just pisses me off. I'll say that. If someone comes in and they tell you, even if you can't see them doing something that they say they're going to do, let's say someone tells you they want to write a book one day and you didn't know that about them and you've known them for a long time. And now all of a sudden they've said they'd always wanted to write a book. Well, then they come in a month later and they're all excited and they have the first chapter of their book written and they're like ear to ear smiling about it, right? And you just start saying, you know how hard it is to get people to buy books? There's so many options out there, man. Like, what makes you think people are going to want to read your book? Why are you, I mean, that seems like you're going to waste some time, probably not make any money off of it. You just took a knife and cut the throat of that person's dream that you claim to care about if you're that kind of person. So that's a way that crab mentality manifests itself. There's sabotage. Sabotage is when you go around to other crabs. I say other crabs, if they're willing to listen and hear one crab out, maybe they're a crab too, but that's when you go around and you're talking behind somebody's back about what they have going on. Did you see where so-and-so keeps posting about how he ran 2 miles today or 3 miles today? So-and-so's always talking about being at the gym and eating right all of a sudden, like he's some sort of health nut now. I'm tired of hearing about it. As if you can't just continue scrolling. And then there's shame and guilt where you use manipulation to make anyone having success feel bad for their own success. And that's where you're like, oh yeah, well, man, I forgot you can't go hang out with us because you're too busy doing this, or you're getting ready to go on another big vacation, or you're getting ready to do whatever. It's just guilt tripping people. So there's really 3 kinds of crabs. Let's start with the nostalgia crab. The nostalgia crab is, they want you to stay exactly who you've always been because that is the most comfortable place for them. Not for you, for them. So when they say stuff like, man, I really miss the old days, or you remember when we did it, it's not always innocent. Sometimes it means I miss when your life made me feel better about my life. And I would say, I've never been in this situation, but I would say someone recovering from drugs, for example, there's a reason, especially if you're from where I'm from and you're recovering from drugs, the last place you want to go when you get out of rehab or whatever is back to your hometown. Because the first people you're going to run into are the same people you used to do drugs with, and they're going to constantly remind you of how much fun y'all used to have and if you try to change a little bit, they're going to give you crap about it. And the next thing you know, what are you going to be doing again? This is a crab mentality to the extreme version, and I've seen it a million times in my life, speaking specifically about drugs, but it does show up about other things too. Then there's the fear crab. They're so afraid that their ecosystem's going to be upset because everything used to make sense and now it doesn't because you are doing something different. And people don't like change. They just do not like change. We don't like change. That's why it's so hard for us to change ourselves for the better because it's a hassle. It's a hassle to get out of our comfort zone and say, I'm going to change for the better. I'm going to start setting an alarm now. Now I got to carve out time to run. Now I got to carve out time to lift. Now I have to be more mindful of what I eat. Now every time I feel like I want to drink because I made the mistake of turning the news on for 5 minutes, I have to find something else because I don't need to use alcohol as a crutch. It's a lot of changing that people don't like. And that includes the crabs in the bucket because they see you change and that upsets the whole apple cart for them. Nothing makes sense anymore. Then there's the control crab, and that could go back to being the ringleader guy. He likes when things are manageable, he or she. Everything needs to be predictable. They don't want to see you too confident. They don't want to see you too independent. They don't want to see you too successful. Everybody has to stay the same. That can be a town-wide culture thing. I've seen that too. Where I come from, there are a lot of great, great people. And there are a lot of people that have done some successful things. But if you try to do something successful and you're not one of the ones anointed to be successful, especially if you pick something that doesn't go along with necessarily the culture of the town, say, you could be in for getting a whole town of people that act like you ain't nothing. So, like, we have a world champion bull rider from where I'm from. World champion bull rider fits in where I'm from. That makes perfect sense. Like, that's awesome. Okay. We have an NBA champion, 6-time NBA champion where I'm from. Basketball makes sense. People like basketball. But if you had, I don't know, somebody that became like a world renowned ballet artist or something like that, most people where I'm from wouldn't care at all. They'd just be like, well, who cares? You know, because it's ballet. It doesn't fit in with our culture. So you always have to think about that as well. So besides crabs in a bucket, how do you know when you're currently sitting in a bucket? How do you know when you look around in your environment if you're in a bucket? The number one way to know is if your wins are minimized. If you're doing something good for yourself that you're obviously proud of and people shoot it down, ignore it, or act like it's not a big deal. And look, this is coming off like someone that sounds like they got to have a pat on the back every 5 minutes. I've never needed a pat on the back. Most people where I'm from, they don't care about pat on the back. They just want paycheck. Leave me alone. I don't have to have blue ribbons. Most people don't have to have blue ribbons. But when you do something cool, you can tell. You can tell the difference between people that are just like, it ain't me to pat somebody on the back for doing what they ought to be doing anyway. Like, I get that. I get that. But at the same time, you can see it by the look in their eyes where doesn't matter what you do, you're never going to get any credit for it. It's going to be minimized. Nobody's going to care. And that's a crab mentality. Your goals are mocked. When people start mocking, and then when they see you getting pissed about it, they start giving you the little nudge like, oh man, you know I'm just kidding, man. I'm just kidding. That's a crab mentality where your changes are questioned. And I don't mean truly wanting to get to the heart of why you decided to do what you're doing, because you can inspire people that way. You know, if somebody comes up to you, go, man, what made you decide to quit drinking for a year? Like, honestly, what were you thinking to do that? You know, that sounds like an honest, innocent question, and maybe they're pondering doing something similar. But some people question, like, what'd you feel like you need to go do something like that for? What? You think you got to go out and run and lose weight? What difference does that make? You know, or we're all going to die anyway, or some bullshit like that. That's somebody being a crab in a bucket. They're trying to get away from the fact that they didn't go do it. Your discipline annoys people. Your ambition becomes arrogance to them. Your improvement is seen as a betrayal to the group. If people think you changed and they tell you you've changed, good, because that's the point. That's what you were trying to do anyway. The bucket is not where you want to live. It's not your home, okay? So how do we break away from the guilt? Because there is guilt associated with it. Crabs are professionals at making us feel guilty about things. Well, for starters, we stop justifying our goals. We don't have to justify our goals. They're our goals. They're nobody else's goals. If people ask too much, you can always tell them to mind their own business if you really want to be like that. You can refuse to explain what you're doing. You can detach emotionally from their expectations. You can surround yourself with people that like to climb, not crabs. Climbers, not crabs. That's it. You don't owe anybody the version of you that you don't want to be. Okay. It doesn't matter if they feel safe with this new version of you or not, if it rattles their cage or not. You don't owe that to anybody. Your growth is not a threat. It's an invitation that they're refusing to accept because, again, not a zero-sum game. They could do the same thing. So next week, we're going to get even sharper. We're going to be discussing growing in the shadows and skill stacking, because the best way to reach your goals is to keep them as close to the best as you possibly can. Before the crabs start coming out and trying to pull you down in the bucket, you want to have a little bit of momentum towards your goals, right? And so if this episode exposed the bucket in your life, share it with someone else and help them climb out. This is Toma, taking on middle age. See you next week.